Any good stories from the road?
Pipe up.
I wish we'd gotten seen a little bit more out of our punter.
I'm starting to puke.
It makes my stomach hurt.
I thought he was going to die.
I'm starting to throw up in my mouth a little bit.
He's on the probiotics.
Is Georgia playing the 1985 Bears this weekend or what?
A lot of Todd talk.
Rat poison proof.
They're mongoose.
We will not be hunted at the University of Georgia. I can promise you that. The hunting that we do will be done from us going the other direction.
What's up, folks? It's the Georgia Show. The rumors you've heard about Wes are not true. Wes did not perish in a fire. He is still with us. He's alive. I got Wes's permission to go ahead and tell everybody why he's not here. He was just maimed in the fire. He'll be fine. No, he actually, Wes became a dad ×2 yesterday. His wife gave birth to a beautiful baby, and he told us that he is going to name it Javon Bullard Blankenship. And he also told us it was 14 pounds and 30 inches long.
Yeah.
Which immediately caused me to freak out. And then he told us it was 8 pounds, 7 ounces, and he is a 23 inch long. But we didn't get a real answer on the baby's name.
Andrew.
Huh?
Andrew.
Okay, I didn't see that part. I'm sorry.
Yeah, Andrew Blankenship. I heard it beat out Breaking T Blankenship.
Okay. But yeah, he initially sent us a text saying that he was going to name it Javon Bullard Blankenship, and it was 14 pounds and 30 inches long. And I immediately texted my wife thinking he was for real. And she was like, "Oh my God, is mom okay?" And mom is fine. She's a trooper. She puts up with Wes, and Wes puts up with us. So he is not with us tonight. Roos will be joining us later. We got a full show. We're going to hit some high spots. Brock Bowers comments on Mike Bobo. Brock Bowers just in general. Palmer had a good story on him. I had a subpar story on him, like all of my stories. And then we're going to talk about kind of observations for spring practice, some of the things we've seen thus far. And then when Roos joins us, we got some recruiting stuff to get to. Landon Thomas gaining a 5th star, and maybe a little Dylan Raiola talk after his visit. But Palmer, Brock Bowers, you were there last night. I was not. I had bolted after practice. What I don't know. Brock Bowers doesn't normally give you sound bites. He doesn't normally say interesting stuff. It's kind of counterintuitive for him. What did you think about it?
Yeah, I did enjoy hearing from Brock. And we heard from Brock and Javon Bullard last night. Does not show as us being live on YouTube yet.
That's strange.
Technical difficulties. We got to get Wes back.
Yeah.
Yeah. We might have just gone live on YouTube since it was scheduled for 8:30.
Yeah, we're definitely live on YouTube now.
Cool. Well, hey,
we're congratulating Wes because Wes is a father ×2. His wife gave birth to Andrew Blankenship yesterday, and that's why he's with us, not with us tonight. Wes now has a little boy, a little girl, and we're fired up for him.
Yeah, excited for Wes. Excited for to be hearing from Brock Bowers as well. That's where we were going before we hit technical difficulties that I think we're getting worked out.
Yeah.
Still doesn't show as live on YouTube with 0 viewers. I know Wes is what brings in everybody to watch, but would hope
we're definitely live on YouTube as I watch it externally, so I think we're good to go.
Okay, good. Brock Bowers, we heard from him after Tuesday's practice. Him and Kamari Lassiter. Brock talked about, first of all, I thought it was pretty telling to hear from Brock that he is just his mindset going into this year. And the fact that he is keeping a level head. It was very similar. I feel like we had these same conversations last spring, hearing him speak after his outstanding freshman season. He's keeping the same approach. He's no different than the guy he was the last 2 seasons, and keeping the same approach, wanting to keep up his involvement in the offense the same way, and ready to take on whatever that takes, whatever that looks like. Obviously, no Darnell Washington. The tight end room is going to look different. New offensive coordinator. He talked about what that may look like, some wrinkles that are going to be involved with Mike Bobo. Obviously not giving too much away there. But the fact that he's enjoying what things look like, and that Bobo worked with the tight ends last season. We heard that from Darnell at the Combine. And now we're hearing it from Brock Bowers himself, the man, the myth, the legend, the star of that tight end room, has praise for Mike Bobo, what he's done already, working with that group, and what he's excited about for the future for that group.
Yeah, and my point, kind of coming from it, I couldn't write it this way because you can't write a story around a player that, hey, he's normally boring, but he's not being boring this time. And ultimately, he wasn't being boring. He was. I think he was being honest when he talked about the fact that he likes, some of the wrinkles and some of the things being thrown, his way, from Mike Bobo. And, Bobo's had a lot of success with tight ends in the past. He's had success with tight ends that are similar to Brock Bowers. I mean, you look at Orson Charles. Orson Charles wasn't quite, nobody is quite the athlete that Brock Bowers is. Well, Orson Charles was probably the most successful tight end in Georgia history, just in terms of, I think he had maybe the best single season for a tight end before Bowers. Maybe it was Leonard Pope, but hey, Mike Bobo coached him too. Not necessarily coached him, but he was a quarterback's coach. He was around when that was around. So some of the better tight ends, he was around when Ben Watson was there, Leonard Pope. Jay Rome had a good little run there. Arthur Lynch was a really good player for Bobo. There were some fantastic tight ends during Bobo's time at Georgia. And Bowers just kind of breaks the mold on all of them. Honestly, I can't think of a college tight end I would ever pick over Brock Bowers. Everybody knows about my man crush here. I don't know that I would ever pick one.
It's huge.
Yeah, the thing about it is, like, what tight end do you hand a jet sweep to and you feel like, hey, he can house this. He can house this against an elite football team. I think where I really started to kind of get really into this whole Bowers thing was that SEC championship game last year, the only game Georgia's lost in the past 2 years. Georgia was able to kind of keep its head above water and maybe give itself a chance if a couple of things broke right to win that game because of number 19. And he put on a similar performance against Alabama that night to what Todd Gurley did in that 2012 SEC championship game. I've watched Todd Gurley. I've watched Nick Chubb at Georgia. I've covered those guys in person. And Brock Bowers, when he touches the football, is very, very similar to those players, in my view, because of the way he attacks defenses and because of the way he breaks tackles and how he can run away from guys. So I think, he's a special talent. Obviously, he's a luxury for Mike Bobo. But I think, one of the things I've when I was writing the story today about what he had to say about the new wrinkles that Bobo was putting into the offense, I'm sitting there thinking, like, all right, well, I know what people are going to say. They're going to say, what was he supposed to, right? Well, what Brock Bowers is supposed to say is something really boring, because he's always extremely boring. Maybe the worst quote on the team, and one of the worst quotes I think I've ever covered at Georgia. But he gave a good one on Bobo about kind of bringing new wrinkles to the offense. And funny, Kirby Smart used the exact same language when he spoke to us in the preseason.
Yeah, what people are going to think that wrinkle is Brock Bowers as a fullback. I mean, we joked about it, but that feels like something that people are going to jump to that extreme and think, oh, well, they're going to use Brock as this and that, and what the new wrinkles. Look, if you have a player like Brock Bowers and you've seen what he can do, whether you were on staff last year or not, he saw from afar what he did in 2021, watched him do it against Auburn. And then, in 2022 was able to watch it a little bit closer, being, working with him and getting hands-on and being a part of that team and that offense. You're stupid if you don't continue to do the same sort of things. I mean, you're dumb. And this is Kirby Smart wouldn't hire somebody that's dumb. This is somebody that has coordinated. You don't get paid millions of dollars to be dumb. People. Mike Bobo is somebody that has coordinated offenses. He knows the kind of weapon that he has because when you're a coach at that level, you're able to identify somebody that's different. And whether you've had somebody that's different or not, Brock Bowers is different. And it would be crazy to think that Mike Bobo isn't going to use Brock Bowers in similar ways to what Todd Monken did the last couple of years.
Yeah, 100%. See, Matthew C's pointing out the third and long stuff. I would challenge folks to go look at third and longs under Todd Monken. I've been in many a game thread over the past 3 years when Todd Monken would catch it in the teeth for calling a draw play on third and long. Also, a lot of times that's the head coach's call. A lot of times that's the head coach's being like, hey, let's run it and punt it because you don't want to get yourself in any further trouble. Running the ball on third and long is not bad when you got a Georgia defense on the other side like the defense on the other side like Georgia has. And, I'm just really interested to see I don't give a crap about what we see at G-Day because that's not going to be what the offense is going to look like. That Georgia's going to air raid and sling it around and do all that stuff, especially whenever you look at the fact, and we need to get into this too, that they're shorthanded at tight end right now. I mean, they are not as shorthanded as you might think, because I got to looking at it, Palmer, one less tight end right now than they had this time last year.
Because they were down Darnell and they were down Brock.
Oh, yeah. Oh, actually, yeah, same amount of tight ends then, because they had I guess Delt was around. Yeah, Delt was around. So one less than this time last year. So I mean, it wasn't really a huge difference, but you can't run 12 personnel on both sides of the ball, not unless you put Bowers on one team, Sperling on the other, and then have Lawson Lucky, who has impressed thus far, bouncing back and forth. But ultimately the wide receiver depth's a little bit better. I think you're going to see a lot more 3 wide receiver stuff at G-Day. And, you're going to see Georgia throw the ball a ton. It's not going to look like the traditional offense, because Georgia's not going to throw it 70% of the time in any particular game this coming season. If it does, Georgia's not as good as we thought it was, because they're having to throw to catch up. And they shouldn't have to be throwing to catch up with anybody on that schedule. Pierce Sperling out for the rest of spring, broken collarbone, will have surgery, expected to be back in June, and it's his right collarbone. Nothing related to, I think, any other injuries ever had. What's the impact analysis there, Palmer?
Yeah, I definitely think it obviously hurts to lose somebody. It hurts Pierce more than it hurts Georgia, I think, because this is a kid that came in for the opportunity to learn, to get those reps, and now he's not going to have that chance because of an unfortunate injury. So I think that you going back to the offense. I mean, I think that you're going to see more work for those wide receivers. You're going to see more work for these quarterbacks. You're going to see that a lot this year, and you're going to see that a lot this spring because of the impact that it takes, the impact that it has losing Pierce here. And so, I think that he's somebody that needs to put on a little bit of weight. We can see him here on that first day of practice, no pads So you get a better picture of what he kind of looks like, in person, more so than you would if he was wearing pads and was bulked up by that. You still have Oscar Delp. Look, here's what I think it is. And it relates to the conversation we were just having about Mike Bobo and this offense, is that Georgia's offense is going to look different without Darnell Washington. You don't have a 6'7", 280-pound freak of nature. And so if you're going to go to tight end sets, what is that going to look like? It probably looks maybe a little bit more spread out. It puts pressure on guys like Lawson Lucky, the other, early enrollee freshman, Oscar Delp. It puts pressure on those guys to step up and emerge as blockers, as opposite of Bowers. And it gives them an opportunity. I think that's where it hurts the most for Pierce, is that he's missing out on that opportunity to get involved, get established. I think it was going to be an uphill battle anyway with Oscar Delp, a part of this offense. And so I think that was, it's obviously unfortunate for him.
Yeah, no question about it. And, it is pointed out there by Rhett Womack, collarbones are not easy to come back from. First of all, they're painful as crap. Like, I had a bruised one time, and it was a very painful injury. Thankfully, I never broke one. I separated my shoulder a couple of times, but I never broke my collarbone. It's a joker of an injury, man. And that's why we're talking about in kind of the last third of March here. He's going to be out all of April and all of May. I mean, this is going to be a good 10 weeks before he's ready and coming back. He's having a surgery. He's going to be fine, though. I mean, he's got one of the best medical staffs out there, working with him. And it means a lot of reps for Lawson Lucky, who, to me, man, really fits in athletically. And I guess this is a pretty good transition time, Palmer, to start talking about some of our observations from spring practice. And I'll go with this one on Lucky before we get into our main takeaway. So be thinking about that. Be thinking about your number one main takeaway from the two practices we've seen from Georgia. This is not my number one, but I will kind of, like I said, filter into Lawson Lucky here. He fits in athletically when you watch them run routes. I mean, the way he can drop his weight and change direction, the way he plucks the ball out of the air, the way he kind of leaves his feet and his light on his feet. Lawson Lucky is a big-time athlete. And I think that Georgia fans are going to be really, really happy and really maybe even surprised with how good he is. I don't know how good Pierce Spurlin's going to be. I see a very gangly, athlete in Pierce Spurlin, but Lucky's a little more compact and looks like he's a little more physically ready to kind of hold up to that pounding. He can play that H-back position. He can be a true Y guy. I mean, he can do a lot of different things from that tight end position. And like I said, I've been really impressed with him. Just in the short time we've watched, and I've heard some good things about him as well. But Palmer, getting to our spring practice observations, we've seen two practices. We've seen probably a little over 30 minutes of practice thus far. What would you say is the one thing you've noticed about this team, maybe more than anything?
So, I can't help but think about the wide receivers and that position group, the talent, the amount of talent and, experienced talent that you've got. And maybe it's not experienced at Georgia. You've got two guys that are transfers in that room that are going to be counted on. But, we were asked on the board yesterday and about the biggest difference between this spring and last. And, of course, it's the presence of Jake Rowe. You weren't around last spring, so that one fell upon me. And I think it's obviously the quarterbacks and the question, the uncertainty there. It's not necessarily a question about the guys. It's more a question about who is the guy, the uncertainty about who is the guy. And I think that comes across in it puts a certain pressure on them during the sessions that we get to see with the wide receivers. But I think when you look at the wide receivers, That's one of the biggest differences to me because of again, the talent that you have there. Dom Lovett. Can't say Dom Blaylock. Dom Lovett, Dominic Lovett, Rara Thomas, the freshman. I mean, Tyler Williams is somebody that is just physically outstanding. Yazid Haynes and Anthony Evans both looked the part. And then obviously that's in a room that brings back Lad McConkey, Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, Dylan Bell, all guys that contributed last year. There are just a lot of guys that I think Arian Smith. I mean, the fact that I went that deep into the wide receiver discussion without mentioning a guy that has constantly had buzz around him, says a lot about where that wide receiver room is. So I think that to me is one of the biggest differences and is probably one of the things that has been most impressive, especially on the offensive side of the ball. I mean, the weapons that are around those quarterbacks. We talked about the tight ends, obviously the receivers there as well. And an experienced running back room, you're not having to replace two guys in that running back room and see who's going to step up. You've got two guys back, you're replacing one, but you've got two guys back that have played major roles, as opposed to just one last season with Kenny McIntosh. I don't think coming into 2022, you could have said that Kendall Milton or Dejan Edwards had played a major role. Kendall based on some injuries that had held him back, Dejan based on the depth chart that had held him back. You can very clearly say that going into 2023, that those two guys have played major roles, and you've got talented backs that you're excited about in Branson Robinson, Roderick Robinson, and Andrew Paul when he can get healthy. So the weapons, to me, it's the thing that has stood out is the weapons that are around the quarterbacks. Yes, there is uncertainty with who's going to be the guy at that position, but you've got so many talented skill players around them that whoever it is going to have a lot of help.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. And, I look back to last season, a couple points on the receivers here. I look back to last season and, October was probably Georgia's least, late September through October is probably Georgia's least impressive stretch of the season, that Kent State, Missouri stretch. What was going on then? Well, first of all, Georgia was turning it over. Secondly, Lad McConkey was playing awful football. He was dropping everything thrown his way. He fumbled it a couple of times, and they were key fumbles. It wasn't until he picked it up that the offense really started to take off. And I think coming into this year, when you've got Ladd and when you've got Dominic Lovett, and if you've got a healthy Arian Smith, that is a lot of stress on a defense. That's even more stress than Darnell Washington put on a defense, because you're like, man, we saw number 84 absolutely light up Tennessee and absolutely light up TCU in some big games. And that he can get you. Well, you also know Dominic Lovett can get you. And by the way, we were watching some sort of weird 2-on-1, two defensive backs versus one receiver drill. Dominic Lovett lowered a shoulder and took everything Jonel Aguero had to give him. And it was just like a train wreck there.
One of the first reps, if I recall.
Yeah, it was very, very physical play, and by both players, it was impressive. So Dominic Lovett is a playmaker. I mean, we're talking about one of the leading receivers in the SEC last year with very sketchy quarterback play. Not only those guys, Arian Smith, you brought him up. I mean, you don't do what Arian Smith did in the playoff, which was basically just cook everybody that tried to cover him. If you're not a fantastic player, and for him, obviously, it's staying healthy. I agree with that 100%. And I also think, Palmer, I can't shake the idea that somebody that we're not really talking about, somebody we're not really expecting huge things from, is going to surprise us. And whether that's Marcus Rosemy, Jack Saint, or whether it's Dylan Bell.
McConkey.
Yeah. I'm just saying, like, this coming year. I think that one of those guys are, because you expect it from Ladd, you expect it from Lovett. Heck, you may even expect it from Rara because you've seen him do it before. But I think one of those guys, and it's probably going to be Jack Saint or Dylan Bell. I think one of those dudes is going to make some plays for Georgia.
Well, and I think that's consistent with what has occurred over the last couple of years. This time in before that 2021 season, we weren't really talking about Ladd McConkey a ton. AD Mitchell had an impressive spring and stood out in the spring game. We weren't talking about Marcus Rosemy-Jacksaint a ton, and nobody had huge expectations for him in 2022, and he ended up as one of the top 5 pass catchers. So that idea is certainly consistent with what has played out and how things have shaken out over the last couple of years, is that typically during the spring, during summer workouts, during fall camp, somebody emerges out of nowhere and comes to be a big time player for the Bulldogs. So flipping things over, unless you got something else on offense.
Well, I do want to answer this question here real quick about CJ Smith. Running with the twos, based on what we've seen at practice, they do the routes on air. 3 receivers are out there. He's usually in that second group at flanker or Z receiver with, I believe, Dylan Bell, who's at split end, and Dominic Lovett, who has been running at the slot. So I've seen some good things out of him. I just don't really know. There are a lot of mouths to feed there, man. And I tell you what, if he emerges, he's going to have to earn it, because there are a lot of good football players in that room right now.
And look, he could very easily be the one that emerges. I mean, he could very easily be with that skill set and that speed and that size. That is, and I wrote about him after the playoffs. Talked to him. I believe I spoke to him at National Championship Media Day. But talking to him and what has he learned, and the biggest thing that he said is, it was learning how to take the speed that he has and translate that to football. It's not just track speed. You've got to figure out how you use that on a football field in a football setting. And nobody was better for him than that, learning that than Arian Smith. It took Arian some time, because early on in Arian's career, I mean, look at him. He was just a, run past these guys and it's almost gimmicky. I mean, calling a, go route isn't a gimmick, but it was a very select area that he could and was making an impact. And I feel like as Arian has gotten older, especially when he's been healthy, when for an extended period of time, we've seen a more developed route tree from Arian. I mean, I think about that the 4th and 6, I think it was, touchdown against Missouri in 2021.
Yeah,
that wasn't just put on the burners and go. That was finding an open space. Yeah. A nice corner route there. Obviously the play that people remember this year was just a go. And I think that with CJ, you've got somebody that has size, that has speed, that's still learning, young in his time at Georgia, is still learning how to use that. And also he's competing with Arian Smith for those reps. I mean, if you're trying to find, hey, who's the fast guy that we want to put out here for this, for this specific role, it's going to be Arian Smith right now.
And probably,
and then you've got some guys that are young that are capable of doing it too.
Well, also probably competing with Ladd McConkey and Dominic Lovett, who are probably cross-training there with that slot position as well, especially Ladd. I mean, Ladd hasn't played a lot of slot in his career. He's played a lot of Z, which is what CJ Smith and Arian Smith are both trying to do right now. And God, Georgia's recruiting way too many Smiths, man. We got to get some Smiths out of here. We got to get
Robinsons.
We've cut down on the Warrens. We got, I don't think is there a Warren left now? We got rid of Warren Erickson.
Warren Brinson.
Yeah, Warren Brinson's still around. Warren Buffett's still around, eating his egg muffin every morning. But yeah, I mean, so many Smiths there, and Georgia's receiving room goes deep, man, because I really like all 3 of those guys. You brought up Tyler Williams. I don't know that I've seen a Georgia receiver. I think George Pickens is probably the closest thing I've seen that you look at and you're just like, holy crap, look at that guy just physically. that is an NFL looking wide receiver, and he's 18 years old. I don't know where he's going to be as far as his development or learning the playbook. That's a lot. That is a lot. But he's a good looking player. We can use this to kind of transition over to the defensive side of the ball, Palmer. But my number one takeaway is Georgia has.
Before we do that, here's your look at here's your look at Tyler Williams.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I mean, dude, he can move his kneecap around without bending at the waist. I mean, he can. And he looks bigger in pads too. I mean, he looks like a 215-pound wide receiver, and he's light on his feet. One of the things I noticed in the fully padded practice we saw, which was yesterday. He caught like a dig route over the middle, and it was one of those where he kind of left his feet so he could catch it in kind of the soft part of his body, not against his shoulder pads. It wasn't necessarily, it was kind of a little bit behind him, and he kind of jumped and caught it, kind of cupped it on his back shoulder. And one of the things I've noticed with receivers over the years, Van Jefferson is one that really stood out to me with this, is what happens when those feet hit the ground, right? And it wasn't like feet hit the ground, then he had to decide to run. It's like he jumps up, he secures the football. When the feet come down, he's already kind of exploded upfield part of the way. And that's just how athletic he is. And kind of going in this vein, my main takeaway is Georgia's got a big football team. It is a very big football team. I look at the outside linebackers. Chidera is just absolutely going in on. Both days we've been there, he's been on a warpath, just all over the IMG guys, basically taunting them for being from IMG, and that's Samuel Mpemba and Gabriel Harris. But that's a big group. The offensive line group is massive. The inside linebacker group, there's some guys over there. I need to look at the roster. I was looking at some of my photos, and I'm like, who the heck is this guy? Who's number 5 with the inside linebackers?
Raylan Wilson.
Okay, I wasn't sure. I thought that's who that was, but so who's number 30?
30 is a walk-on.
Walk-on, yeah.
It's Terrell Foster. Also,
Terrell Foster looks
IMG.
Awesome. Yeah, another IMG cat. Yeah, looks awesome. So yeah, I mean it's impressive that the team that Georgia has put together from a physical standpoint. It's almost like I don't know who you would want to get off the bus first. I mean, honestly, probably Jordan Hall. Jordan Hall is put together like I don't know if you remember have you ever seen the photos of Darnell Dockett from his high school days?
I have not.
Oh my God. One of the most intimidating forces you've ever seen. If Roos was on here right now, he would probably be squealing like a child. Darnell Dockett's high school days were incredible. This cat is put together like a running back, like a jumbo running back. He's not a fat guy. He's high hip dude.
Are you talking about Jordan Hall or Darnell Dockett?
Both of them.
Yeah.
Both of them. Yes. Yeah. Who are you talking about? Darnell Dockett or Jordan Hall? Yes, both. Freak show. So hearing some good things about him too. It's kind of started to trickle out in the last couple of days. I caught some flack on our board for saying I didn't think Jamal Jarrett was Jordan Davis big. He's not. Okay. I know a lot of you guys would love to look at your pictures and think that he's just as big. He's not. He's just not. He's closer to Nazir Stackhouse in size than he is Jordan Davis, and that's fine. He may be a little taller than Nazir, but in terms of how they're put together. But listen, I think Jamal Jarrett's going to be a fantastic player too. And the offensive line, now you listen, even from far away, we're never close to them. Big group of dudes. I've really enjoyed kind of watching that group from afar because, you got a lot of different body types there. And Xavier Truss has moved some weight around. Oscar Delp has gotten bigger. Georgia's got a big football team, man, a really big football team.
Yeah, there's Jamal Jarrett for you. He's not.
I will say this: that 55 looks small on his chest.
It does. He's big. He's big, but he's not Jordan Davis big.
No, he's not. He can fit inside of Jordan Davis like a Russian nesting doll.
Yeah. I mean, you mentioned it, and I would say this has been one of the biggest biggest things that I've taken away is Chidera as a coach and his motivation skills. And I think that's very important with this outside linebacker group, because you've got guys that are hurt this spring. You've got Marvin Jones that's not out there. You've got Jalen Walker that could be in that position group, could be an inside linebacker. Either way, not out there. You've got Darius Smith that wasn't out there yesterday when we were out there watching. Obviously there's opportunity for these young guys. Chaz Chambliss is there. He's a leader. He's a veteran. He's going to be a part of this rotation. But there's an opportunity for some of these younger guys, whether it's a Darius, who's entering his second season, CJ Madden entering his second season. Roos has always referred to CJ Madden as a slash, in that Robert Beal role. Speaking of the man, here he is, Jake Roos, joining us now. Jake, we're talking about Georgia's outside linebackers, those early enrollees, and some of the younger guys that have an opportunity. And I was saying that you always have referred to CJ Madden as a slash, could be a hand in the dirt guy. He's actually listed on the roster as a defensive end. So he's somebody that has an opportunity to step up. And then obviously the three early enrollees, Gabe Harris, Sam Mpemba, and Damon Wilson.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I think that Madden, that makes a lot of sense to me for him to kind of be like a 5-tech guy, hand in the dirt type. Kind of
and there's the need with Robert Beal gone.
Right, sure.
And he's clearly bigger than everybody else in that group.
Yeah.
I mean, he definitely is.
Yeah. I'm not too shocked to hear that. I mean, he's probably playing at like 265, 270-ish?
Yeah.
I would think.
Physically looks a lot like Jonathan Ledbetter did kind of those early years. I mean, Led kind of ended up getting around 280 by the time he was a senior. But sophomore, junior year, you and I had those conversations with Kevin Scherer about how the kid needed to, shed that tapeworm and gain some weight. And he definitely did at some point. But CJ Madden is every bit as big as Jonathan Ledbetter was as a sophomore.
That's not a name you hear a lot anymore, right? And which is a shame, man. I had huge expectations for Jonathan Ledbetter. Not to say he was not a good player. He was. But I thought he was going to do a ton. I really did. But then you talk about those freshman guys coming in. Damon Wilson's the dude who kind of, I think, has the edge there. I think Mpemba, it's just going to take some time. He's going to have to focus on that position after splitting time throughout his career. And then I think, to me, Gabe Harris is a very intriguing guy. Those pictures I've seen of Gabe Harris make him look like he's kind of ready built, if I'm not mistaken.
He may be he may be of those freshmen the biggest one. I mean, I think Mpemba's kind of that hey, if you're going to go do a Mr. Universe type deal, I think Mpemba's probably just naturally more just ripped up and all of that. But I think Gabe Harris carries the most mass, probably the longest. But yeah, I mean, in terms of watching Chidera coach those guys, Damon Wilson is getting a lot less fire than the others are.
Yes.
I mean, he's getting
and maybe it's just because he didn't go to IMG.
Yeah, maybe Chidera's got a bug up him somewhere about IMG because, man, both practices we've been out there, he has just been all over those cats. But Kirby has too. The Kirby thing,
it was funny because as we were walking off the field, I was looking around and I saw somebody wearing an IMG polo, an IMG pullover. So they had somebody out there.
Well, Kirby's doing his thing too. And we heard something from him that we had heard from Javon Bullard, which Wes pointed out last week, was he was yelling out, talking about eating off the floor. He was talking, I think he was talking to CJ Allen or somebody. He goes, seriously, are you ready to eat off the floor? If you're ready to eat off the floor, you can play at Georgia, which I can't even wrap my head around it. It doesn't sound too, it sounds like a good way to get a stomach bug. But
so Jake, we were discussing this before players came in last night, and a couple of folks did. Both the players mentioned eating off the floor. When Kirby says that, do we think he's talking about physically getting down and eating off the floor, or do we think it's a food fell on the floor, let's pick it up, let's eat it?
Desperate. He's talking about desperation. It's just, hey, hey, listen, if a crumb falls, are you willing to eat it? Well, are you willing to take whatever you can get to help this football team? And, in the past, I haven't heard him talk about eat off the floor, but I have heard guys talk about, I'm looking for a crumb. I'm just waiting for one to fall. I'm working for it. I'm trying to get it there. I can't get out of my head
these
right
guys
now,
are so big. They're just eating.
Yeah, that's it. I mean, and we're going to have to transition to recruiting here in just a second. But before we do, I can't get out of my head right now. Just every time I look at Roos on the screen, I just hear Elvira. He looks like an Oak Ridge boy with this haircut he's got going on. I just do bapa.
A very legitimate mullet I'm rocking. It's true.
Hey, listen, there's a Shoney's in Oak Ridge, Tennessee. I may go this year.
Yeah.
Let's get into this recruiting thing real quick, Roos. Landon Thomas is a 5-star. Surprise you?
No, not at all, man. That was a matter of time thing, in my opinion. I am kind of surprised that it took this long, to be honest with you, if I'm surprised about anything. You can
number 2 tight end in the country now?
Number 1 in the industry.
Okay.
Number two for in the On 300. So On 3's personal rankings, yes, number 2 there, but number 1 overall per the industry. And listen, I dropped a quote in the story today from his coach, and I'm just going to pull it up and read it because I thought it was look, coaches are going to talk well about their guys. I get that. I understand. But Sean Calhoun, who's a tremendous coach and has done well wherever he's been, head coach at Colquitt, told us this last summer when George landed him. He said, Landon's skill set, 1, you just have some things you thank the good Lord for. The good Lord gave him a 6'4", 240-pound frame, and he's maximizing that. You can have nice things and a great body, but are you maximizing it? He's maximizing what he has, and he's also versatile in the role. He can get into a run set. He can go block, and he can go block a linebacker or defensive end. He can pass protect and do those things, and then you can split him out for one-on-one matchups. His route running and ball skills at his age are really good. He runs really well. Again, it's just stuff you don't see at his age. That sounds to me like a prototype Georgia tight end at this point.
Yeah.
That's the kind of stuff that you love to hear. And, big get for Georgia. I mean, big guy to have in this class. What has been the whole time. I mean, people forget, I think, that like he and Nikar were the 2 guys that kind of kicked everything off in this 2024 class last summer after Antoine Jackson decommitted. And so those 2 guys, very, very crucial pieces for Georgia. And Landon Thomas is a freaking dude, man. What do you want to say?
Yeah. And a lot of folks don't even talk about Nikar, who, I talked to a couple of folks from down that way here and there, and they love that kid. They think he is.
Turn the tape on, man.
He's just the absolute truth.
I remember you and I talking about this back in the day, but so Nikar is not this guy, but his hands remind me, the size of them on video remind me of Michael Chigbu's hands.
Yeah.
But Michael Chigbu looked like he had Mickey Mouse
hands. Yeah.
Yeah. He had those Mickey Mouse gloves. Nikar, his hands look like that. And his coach actually said that in the story when I talked to him, that he said, this kid's wearing like double XL gloves. But both of those Colquitt kids, outstanding players. Colquitt's a great program, and they know. I was thinking about that today. How important it is. Guys can come from anywhere. That's empirically true. We've seen that play out a million times. But when you have guys that come from places, I was thinking about like Malachi Starks and Sammy Brown, and Colquitt County is like this, and places that know how to maximize a guy's talent and to get them ready. It really does create a different expectation, I think, when they reach campus. And Landon Thomas is in a program like that.
Well, it's SEC ball. It's SEC ball of the Peach State, because you got Valdosta, you got Lowndes, you got Tift. Tift may be in a different region now. It's been a while since I've been so locked in down there. But I mean, it's a really, really good place to play ball. And those schools down there, they're kind of spread out, and yeah, they recruit from each other a little bit, and you have guys bouncing around, like a Gabe Harris bounced around a little bit, but they put a lot of money into those programs. They train hard, and they don't mind going and playing somebody else. They'll come up and play a Gwinnett County school. Usually they win.
anytime, anywhere.
Anytime, anywhere. And I grew up down there, following those programs a lot, and they put a lot into it. Let's chop some wood rather than get into Dylan Raiola, which, you got anything to earth shatter in there for us, Bruce? You want to chop wood on Dylan Raiola?
Sure, I'll do that. That sounds great.
Yeah, chop some wood on Dylan Raiola.
All right, so I guess I'll kick it off tonight. I'll chop wood on Dylan Raiola and his recent visit to Georgia. Chad Simmons dropped some intel on that, said that Raiola is saying all the right things. Georgia looks like a big factor there. And listen, I'm never going to doubt Chad Simmons. He's the best in the business for a reason, and I really appreciate what he does. I'll say this. The people that I've spoken to about it, though, have not just been super convincing to me. And call it a gut feeling, but I just don't think that he's bound for Athens in the end. I think that it's a situation with Raiola similar to what we saw probably with Arch Manning. I think Georgia will be in it for the long haul. I think it seems like it's swaying each and every visit he takes. And, that's him playing the game. I get it. And he's a smart young man. He's got some incredible people behind him who understand it really well. So I'm not faulting him at all. And I think that Dylan Raiola is doing a fantastic job in handling his recruitment. But I will say my gut feeling says that Athens doesn't end up being the place. And listen, the fact of the matter is, if I'm wrong about that, nobody's really going to care that I was. It's not. No one's gonna care.
You were wrong. Thank God for being wrong.
Yeah, right. They're gonna. Yeah, if they're gonna rub it into my face, they're gonna say, so glad you were wrong. So, like I said, I just don't get that feeling. Tremendous player though, and I think that somebody going to get a great one. I think that Georgia has a great one, though, too, in Ryan Puglisi. So no matter how this 2024 class shakes out at quarterback, as long as Puglisi stays in the fold, I think that Georgia's got a real player in there.
Awesome. Palmer, what you got?
I am chopping wood about Kamari Lassiter. And again,
blah, 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 blah.
Blah, 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 blah. For those of y'all that don't know what we are talking about there, he was handed there was a TikTok during the playoffs, and he was handed the phone and said, hey, say something to the camera. And all he could get out was blah, 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 blah. But Kamari Lassiter, as much gibberish as he may be speaking there, he's saying all the right things when it comes to leadership in this Georgia secondary. You look around, they lose Chris Smith, they lose Keely Ringo. Those are guys that have been out on the field and been in the fire. I think that, you hear these guys, and safety is obviously a really important position for communication purposes. But it's also really important for a leadership standpoint because you're right there in the middle. Having a guy like Keely that made one of the biggest plays in program history, and B had learned and been highly sought after guy and was under pressure to perform and to step up and emerge. I think it's important that Georgia has a guy like Kamari Lassiter, somebody that had to earn his spot, somebody that wasn't just handed the keys and said, hey, run with it. He, this time last year was battling with Nyland Green for a starting position. I remember, and Keely did that too. Keely beat out Amir Speed. But, being the number one cornerback and in the class, people had high expectations for him. Lassiter, I don't think people, maybe were thinking that he was going to be what he's become. And I think he's becoming a leader in that group. Talking about taking these other guys under his wing, Dalen Everett, AJ Harris, on down the line of these defensive backs. He's saying all the right things about bringing guys in, having them do extra work, and really wanting to step up and be a leader. He too talked about eating off the floor, saying that, hey, it's my job as a leader to make sure that we're eating off the floor, to make sure that, he, first of all, that he's eating off the floor, and setting a good example, but then bringing along other guys with him. And so I think when you've got a secondary that's going to be replacing two very, very key members and very talented players, I mean, guys that are going to get picked in the NFL draft, to have a leader like Kamari, and Javon Bullard too. I can't remember if we chopped wood about him last week or that was a stock up. But we heard from him last week. Those two guys, but especially Kamari, showing the leadership. I think that this time next year, we're probably talking about Malachi Starks as one of those leaders. And maybe during the season, we're talking about Malachi Starks as one of those leaders. But right now, during the spring, Kamari Lassiter is stepping up as a leader in this Georgia secondary.
Bro, I don't know. What are you chewing on over there, man? You got like
plastic,
you're chewing like
dude.
it's got the antidote in it, man.
Yeah, I got this. I got just chewing on some plastic. The ring around this Topo Chico bottle. It looks like this right now. Yeah, it's really doing some work on it. You should see me get after a Zaxby straw. It's pretty impressive. All right, so I got a couple logs I got to split here, and I'm glad my axe is sharp. Charles Power hits me up before preseason practice, and he says, "Hey, can you help me keep tabs on the Georgia freshmen? It's a big class." And I hit him up today, and we're talking. And I start naming off the guys that I've heard some stuff about. Right, it's over a third of the guys who enrolled early at Georgia. Raylan Wilson, C.J. Allen, Jordan Hall, Lawson Lucky, Jonell Aguero, Roderick Robinson, Damon Wilson. That's 7 guys, over a third of the 18 guys that enrolled early at Georgia. And that's not to include a guy like Tyler Williams, who has impressed me just on the hoof. And, Yazid Haynes, who I heard just a little bit of buzz about during the preseason, during the pre-spring walkthrough stuff. So that's the first log that gets split. The second is something we hadn't had a chance to cover yet. Wes did so pretty eloquently in a video of his own. Brandon Streeter, Daryl Dickey, 2 additions to Georgia's support staff. Hey, listen, man, both guys got fired as offensive coordinators this past year. Tough to really judge Brandon Streeter getting fired because, listen, Clemson got so much better offensively than they were the year before. I think they just had to lunge at the opportunity to maybe get a Garrett Riley there and hit the reset button and change the culture. But you want to talk about a guy who can just say, "Here's what I've done with the quarterback position." And let's be frank, Deshaun Watson and Trevor Lawrence, it was going to take you were going to have to get in their way to keep them from being great quarterbacks.
Sure.
But both of them met a lot of expectations that weren't easy to meet. Brandon Streeter had a hand in that. Not only that, he helped recruit Trevor Lawrence and helped recruit DJ Uyunglele and Cade Klubnik, who were highly contested guys. I mean, those were recruitments that were really hard.
Georgia wanted every one of them.
Correct. How long is he going to be at Georgia, and can he help Georgia get Dylan Raiola, or can he help him get Merck, or can he help him get somebody else because they want to in this class? I think there's a lot to like about these hires. And honestly, I think Daryl Dickey may be the underrated one because you look and you hear Kirby talk about, and maybe we'll hear him talk again at some point because we hadn't talked to him since, in 8 days and we're not scheduled to talk to him for the rest of this week. But you hear Daryl Dickey talk about, you hear Kirby talk about, hey, what does an analyst do at Georgia? He coaches the coaches. Man, Daryl Dickey's coached running backs. He's coached tight ends. He's coached quarterbacks. He's coached with Jimbo. He's been a head coach. Guy knows how to coach coaches. Guy knows how to look at ball and figure some things out. And I think Georgia made 2 fantastic hires there on the off-field staff. With that said, listen, I'm not good at the transitions like Wes is, and hopefully he and his wife are getting some sleep tonight, after that 14-pound, 30-inch baby, Javon Bullard Blankenship that was born. Roos, I opened up the show and said that the rumors weren't true. Wes has not perished in a fire. With us.
They're old JB Blankenship, man. We're happy.
Yeah, JB Blankenship. Javon Bullard Blankenship. It's amazing. That was totally West.
He didn't name him Rodrigo.
I cannot tell y'all how hook, line, and sinker I bit the 14-pound thing.
No, me too. Me too.
I was just, and I hit my wife. I hit my wife up, and Andrea was like, she goes, "Is Mom okay?" And I was like, "Oh, I can't believe I didn't ask that." Yeah, I mean, congratulations to him. I had a little. I sired a little boy about 4 years ago, and I hang out with that dude all the time. Yeah, hang out with that dude all the time.
Because the reason I remember that is you sent me solo to do a practice report for the first time ever, and you were busy doing important things, and so was I.
What a mistake that was.
Bringing a child into the world.
No, I want to mention real quick. You mentioned the Daryl Dickey thing, and listen, that guy. You can look back over his resume, dude. Long storied history in the state of Texas. So I'm intrigued to see what he can do. You talk about Streeter from a recruiting standpoint, and there's no question that his resume is about as impressive as anybody when it comes to quarterbacks. But those deep ties to Texas, that's a place Georgia has really sought, obviously, and like I said, for obvious reasons to get into. I think that'll help too.
Yeah, just reminded me too. I need to put in an open records request, see how much those dudes are going to make. So I can.
Do you think that Georgia? Do you think Georgia upgraded its analyst positions, which is weird to say, but do you think that Daryl Dickey and Brandon Streeter is a better combo than Mike Bobo and Buster Faulkner?
No, and here's why. Mike Bobo and Buster Faulkner, Georgia born, Georgia bred. Those are Georgia guys. And no, I mean, I don't know. Who knows? I mean, Brandon Streeter's got a better both of them, they have better resumes collectively in terms of like just experience and things like that. It's tough to say overall. I mean, Bobo's still on staff and losing Todd Monken and all that stuff. I mean, there's a lot of accomplishment there, but hard to complain about a duo there with Todd Monken and Buster Faulkner to help Georgia win 2 national championships, and you throw Bobo in there to make it a trio for the second one. Georgia's but I do like what they brought in. I think that they've got good eyeballs on their quarterback position now, and they've got good eyeballs on their offensive coaching staff in general, which I think is going to help in the long term. We'll be back Bark After Dark next week as well. We're going to be back Sunday night for the Georgia show, Monday night Bark After Dark, and then again a week from today for the Georgia show. But that's all we got tonight. I'm Jake Rowe, Palmer Toms, Jake Roos. Y'all have a good weekend.